grade 12. It's me again, and it's our literature class. And today we're going to read a lot of short scenes, okay? 3 through 7, okay? Page 148, please. And uh, without delay, please let's start, okay? And I'm going back to my workbook. Here we are. No, not yet, not yet. Here. Okay, so now scene 3 first. I will give you 10 minutes to read and summarize this scene. Okay, it's pretty short. Okay, and then we will quickly discuss some parts of it. Okay, now look, in this episode, Macbeth shows instability of his character, right? Yesterday we were talking about Lady Macbeth and her disturbed behavior, disturbed and disturbing, okay? And today Macbeth actually shows the same behavior, but if Lady Macbeth was sleeping while behaving strangely, Macbeth is totally awake, okay, and because you remember he doesn't sleep, and he shows some mood swings or mood shifts. He got some bad news, right? What are bad news here? So I guess we can discuss this bad news on when Friday or Saturday in our live lesson, okay? But one of the bad news was that his wife was unwell. Okay, so he, of course, he hears the news that there is some stirring in England, right? And that Malcolm is, Malcolm raises his armies and they start walking, maybe crossing borders or something. But even though he still keeps cheering himself up, right? Faced with bad news, Macbeth tries to cheer himself by recalling the words of the apparitions. Burnham Wood and no man that's born of woman, blah blah. Okay, so it's in the very beginning of this scene, right? The first 10 lines that he is reciting the prophecies, trying to uplift his mood, okay, trying to cheer himself up. But his mood was described in the previous scene as mad and valiant fury, right? You read about it at home, and his mood keeps swinging, okay, and we see it even in this scene. One moment he's calm, another moment he's kind of hysterical, okay. Now I will ask you, of course you cannot work in pairs, so I will ask you to do it on your own. Read aloud all that Macbeth says in this scene, okay, which means lines 1 to 61, which are all the lines of this scene, right? Almost all, okay. Now you cannot share these lines between you, but while reading it on your own out loud, try to change voices, try to play with your tones and intonations, showing how Macbeth is delivering these lines. For example, let me show you. Bring me no more reports, let them fly all, till Burnham Wood removed to Dunsinane I cannot taint with fear. What's the boy Malcolm? Was he not born of woman? The spirits that know all moral consequences have pronounced me thus. Fear not, Macbeth. No man that's born of woman shall ever have power upon thee. Then fly, false thanes, and mingle with the English epicures. The mind I sway by, and the heart I bear, shall never sag with doubts, nor shake with fear. The devil damn thee black, thou scream, thou cream-faced loon! Where goest thou that goose look? You see, like, first 10 lines, he's keeping his cool, okay, he's cheering himself up, but then in lines 11 and 12 he starts shouting, hysterically shouting on the servant who disturbs his solitude, right, his peace and quiet. Mm-hmm. And the servant says, "There's 10,000 geese, Villian." Like, Macbeth is pretending that he doesn't understand that they're talking about soldiers, right? And he keeps shouting on his servant, "Soldiers, sir, go prick thy face and overread thy fear." So you see, he's angry. Okay, so please check his words, check his lines, and see how his mood shifts or swings, how it goes up and down. Okay, what kind of patterns, mood patterns, does he reveal in this episode? Another thing, in lines 40-45, okay, when Macbeth talks to Doctor, you remember that Doctor delivers him the news that his wife is kinda unwell, okay, and the language Macbeth uses in these lines is rich in metaphor, as is both lyrical and tender, okay, because he kind of still wants his wife to be okay and back to him and blah blah. So write down the metaphors you can find in these lines, and in our online class we can discuss these metaphors. Okay, let's go on. So this says your homework, but no, we will do it together while you will so your homework will be scenes 6 and 7. Okay, so but since 4 and 5 are still for now. So again, read and summarize this act. Okay, you can listen to it. I'll give you 10 minutes. It's pretty short. Okay, and again, the next task actually gives us the summary, more or less. The approaching forces decide to camouflage themselves by using branches cut from Burnham wood. Okay, so and this is what happens, right? And doesn't it sound like one of the prophecies coming true? Of course, we cannot expect Forrest to start walking, marching from one place to another, but what's going on now is that the army cuts the branches of those trees and pretend being a forest, right? Like, for example, you see in some performances they just use the small branches, small leaves, and uh, they cover themselves with leaves. In some other performances, screen performances, we see that they are cutting young trees, not only branches but young trees, and the first rows of soldiers are carrying the trees instead of weapon, while others are hiding behind those trees, thus making forest move. So you see that witches didn't lie, but Macbeth didn't understand their message. But now, how would you stage something this big in a theater? How would you make this forest move, and first of all decide how many soldiers would you like to show on stage as Malcolm's army? 10? 50? So, and will they camouflage themselves with branches or just leaves, or they will be like carrying like real trees? How can we bring something that big on a stage that is usually like 30-40 meters wide, 50 maybe, very rarely 50 is very big. Okay, generally 30, and so 30 wide and 10 meters deep. How can we bring something that big on stage? Think about it. Okay, so you see, the forest is coming, and Macbeth is still inside his castle. Stage scene 5, please. The same, please read it and summarize it. Okay, and of course, the main event, the main part of this episode is Lady Macbeth's death. Okay, so how did she die? Uh, did Shakespeare tell us how she died? We don't actually see. Okay, we just know the fact she died. Interesting thing that, for example, in that writing task that I gave you, that was expected to be your writing part of the exam, uh, some of you wrote that Lady Macbeth committed suicide. Uh, Even though I didn't ask you to write about Lady Macbeth's death, and it was obvious that it was taken from some online sources, but the thing is that Shakespeare never tells us uh, if Lady Macbeth dies in her bed, if she drinks poison, if she hangs herself, if she just dies in her bed. Okay, so she just dies, and we learn about it when women start crying. Okay, so Macbeth was uh, Macbeth was trying to organize his army, like hang out our banners on the outward walls. The cry is still they come, our castle's strength will laugh a siege to scorn, and blah 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 blah. And then a cry of women within. What's that noise? It's the cry of women, my good lord. I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek, and my fell of hair would at a dismal treatise rouse and stir as life were in it. I have supped full with horror. Direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot once start me. Okay, and then Satan enters, and Macbeth says, wherefore was that cry? The queen, my lord, is dead. That's all. The queen, my lord, is dead. This is how we learn about her death, and there is no investigation how she died. In some movies, we can see her body under the tower from which she kinda jumped. In some others, she drinks poison. Uh, in yet another movie, she just dies because of her mental state or something, or like her heart couldn't stand it anymore, but she just dies. Okay, now on like in our online class, we're going to talk together about how you think she might have met her death, which would be the likeliest possibility. And then actually right now, without groups of 3 or 4, but just you will write an obituary. Obituary is a small article for a newspaper, very short article, or a very short notice in a newspaper that tells about someone's death. Okay, so you will write an obituary for a newspaper in which you give a short, just 3 or 4 sentences, account of Lady Macbeth's life and death. And don't forget, very important rule in European culture, you will never say a bad thing about a person who died. Okay, we don't say bad thing about diseased people. Okay, so please be kind to poor lady and write her a good obituary. And here, Macbeth gives us one of his most famous monologues, which starts like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. In lines 1928, Macbeth warily speaks of his of time past, present, and future, and of how fragile and empty he finds life. Ultimately, he says that life means nothing. This is a profound contemplation about life. So, now, uh, again, in our online class, we're going to discuss Macbeth's emotions as he says these lines. Who is he speaking them to? What imageries make this speech so powerful? And just on your own, find your own way to read these lines out loud. Okay, I will not ask you to memorize them. We will not have a chance to come together in classroom and spend time reading them out loud for our own pleasure, unfortunately. So please read it on your own. Think what makes this speech so powerful. It's one of the most powerful speeches in Shakespearean plays. 4. The messenger's announcement that he has seen Birnam Wood moving raises issues relating to the theme of fate and will. Fate and will is also one of the most important topics and themes of Macbeth, the same as appearance and reality, right? So, fate is what must happen, and will is how you accept it, or how you, like, you know that we all have our own will, right? And we are willful people, and we want to have right to rule or to run our own lives, right? But very often it happens that fate or God or something else runs our life. So, and there is always this battle between fate and will, God and will. Even if you read ancient Greek myths, very, like, there are a lot of characters who are fighting their fate or fighting God's will. For example, the great Odysseus, the character of Homer's poem, he fights the God's will because he has his own will. Okay, so, and he's not that. So he's not a character who would easily obey the fate. Now, what about Macbeth? Is he really to obey his fate, or he still wants to do something? Because the witches said that, you know, you should not be afraid of anything, or like no harm will come to you until Birnam Wood would go to the Dunsinane Hill. Now, Birnam Wood is marching to the Dunsinane Hill, which means fate is on move too. Now, will he subject himself to this fate, or he will try to struggle with it? To what extent do you think Macbeth has control of his own fate? Can he alter how he might die and who might kill him? Can he change it? Can he affect it? Think about it. And Macbeth is a play preoccupied with what it means to be brave, and each of the characters has the opportunity to prove their courage or to talk about their courage in many ways. And you remember Lady Macbeth tells us what courage is, and Sergeant or the captain in the beginning tells us how courageous Macbeth is, what is real courage, and King tells us something about courage, and Macbeth tells us, and Banquo tells us, and then even Malcolm and Macduff tell us what does it mean to be to be brave, to be a real man or whatever. Okay, so many characters very often in this play tell us or show us what the courage is. Lady Macduff, by the way, also showed us what the courage was. Who do you think is the bravest character in the play? Please gather your ideas, and in our online session we will discuss this too. We have so many questions to discuss in this online session that I think we need more than just 1 hour. Okay, we will see. Now, since 6 and 7 will be your homework, okay, you will do them on your own. They're very, very short, okay. First of all, you will read and summarize them just together, okay, without separation. Then here you will read these secrets of history, okay, Shakespearean sports, and again this task will require a bit of your online research, okay. So use the internet and Google some sports and amusements in the time of Shakespeare, okay. Also, scene 7 is very dramatic. Macbeth is clearly aware that his name will strike terror into the hearts of many. Some directors use this as an opportunity to show just how invulnerable Macbeth is to all those soldiers born of woman, leading up to the killing of young Seward. You remember that Seward was the officer, the captain, who was sent by King Edward, English king, to help Malcolm, okay? And this Seward comes with his son, and Macbeth kills his son, okay? And does Macbeth really feel untouchable, or is he just deranged and increasingly desperate? This is what you will need to think about. And also on the battlefield, Macduff eagerly searches for Macbeth. You see they're coming closer to each other. How should he act on finding his enemy, and why? Okay, so these are the questions for you to think about, and I will see you tomorrow in our last Macbeth class.